France 24 debate. We're looking at the situation in Homs and the outside world, what it's going to do about it with retired General Akil Hachem, a native of Homs, who is with us. Also with us, Vincent Floriani, spokesperson for the French Foreign Ministry. From Brussels, Bahadir Kaliagassi of the Bosphore Institute. And from Washington, Marina Ottaway of the Carnegie Endowment for Peace. I want to pick up on with Bahadir Kaliagassi on what General Hachem said just before we went to the break, the concept of a safe haven zone that would be some 10,000 square kilometers. Is that feasible?
It is feasible, of course. If there is will, it is feasible. International community or a community or an alliance of willing countries to do so is able to do. But safe havens, it's also quite, as you know, it can be very difficult to handle. Just remember in 1995, Srebrenica, almost in the middle of Europe, in Bosnia, there was a safe haven for Bosnian Muslims, but it didn't stop the killing, the massacres of those Bosnian Muslims by the Serbs. So it can be a temporary move. It can show the will of the international community to move forward, but it is just a step. It is not the solution of the problem. The real progress can come with really an increased international pressure to really show to the regime in Damascus that there is no way out, and it can be the last chapter before the end if it does not really cooperate with whatever. It can be an Arab-sponsored peace plan, internal peace plan. It can be a plan of the transition of some powers to a second person, I don't know, the vice president of Syria maybe, with a calendar for transition to democracy. But there is room for compromise still, despite the bloodshed. So it is still possible to really design a near future which has to be credible enough, with enough political will. Safe havens, then it can be, of course, it's very urgent, but it can be also part of a longer plan.
Let me pick
too much to safe havens can be risky.
Let me ask Vincent Floriani, a safe haven, who would police it? Is it feasible?
Well, there are a lot of questions that are raised by that concept. I mean, I understand that there's a need to do something. I mean, there's a humanitarian emergency. There's a moral obligation to act when we see all the killings. What France is concentrating on now is the political transition plan put forward by the Arab League. The safe haven would raise question about a legal question: who would allow it, who would implement it, you know. So we are concentrating.
And it would be tricky to do it without the UN?
Well, we act, I mean, it will imply military action, and that can be authorized by the Security Council only.
You mentioned the Arab League. Do you feel as though there's a ticking time clock? Iraq soon takes over the chairmanship of the Arab League. Do you feel as though the Arab League support that was hammered out 2 weeks ago is something that could be fleeting, that could soon disappear?
I don't think so. We trust the Arab League. They have been very courageous, very active to try
but
to...
will they stay united is the question.
Well, until now they have. The French Foreign Minister Alain Juppé talked yesterday with Mr. Al-Arabi, the Secretary General of the Arab League, and there's still some willingness to act, and we still want to work with the Arab League, and we trust them that they are still committed to try to find solutions for the Syrian people.
Marina Ottaway, do you agree?
Yes, I think the Arab League will continue to try to act. I think Iraq will find itself isolated within the Arab League. Keep in mind that, for example, it's not even clear whether the Arab summit that is supposed to take place in Iraq is going to take place, because many Arab countries are unwilling to go to Iraq. So I think the core of the Arab League, the countries that have acted so far, will continue to try and find a way to put more pressure on the Assad regime. It's also important to keep in mind that none of the solutions that are being discussed, whether to try to get him to step down, whether to try to create a safe haven somewhere in the country, are going to provide immediate relief to the population. Creating a safe haven is a long-term proposition. It means being able to put together sufficient international consensus and a sufficiently large international force to be able to fight to protect the safe area. The Syrians are not just going to give up and say, okay, you want a safe area, you can have it. So there is no immediate solution, unfortunately.
No immediate solution, Akil Hashem. That is the frustrating bit, isn't it? There is no immediate solution.
There is. There is no immediate solution unless the international committee start to realize that he has obligation, humanitarian obligation in every aspect to save the Syrian people. First of all, let me make a small comments about what I heard from the other
Panelists.
The numbers, with all the respect to Vincent, the numbers I know is way above the numbers just mentioned by Mr. Vincent about the dead people, about the arresting people, about the refugees, but this is not very important thing. Why? Not because we don't care, but because even if there is 7,000 killed or 12,000 killed or more, it's still very tragic situation. It's very, very tragic and sad situation. This is first of all. Now, I know for sure from the very beginning that this regime will not stop killing people, even if it takes him 10 years, unless some other countries who are powerful can put an end to this massacre. This is what I know. And then, not important that this has to be attached to the Security Council resolutions. There is so many examples in the recent history that countries like NATO or some other countries intervene in different situations without the cover of the Security Council. Even, there is something maybe you don't know, even Syria in 1970 by itself intervened in Jordan during that, what they called it, the Black September, and they sent, I was there, I was in Dara at that time in the military. They sent the troops to intervene in North Jordan to stop the killing of the Palestinians. So there is so many examples just in Yugoslavia.
Okay, so the UN is not the only solution.
Yes.
The question also is, should there be weapons being given? We're getting a lot of concern that varying countries are giving weapons to varying groups, and we could find ourselves with a Libya-like situation where there's a lot of weapons out there and we don't know where they are.
Yeah, it's completely different, and everybody said the Libya situation is different than Syria. In this regard, there is no concern about that. The Syrian people are very aware about the whole situation. I am in the middle of this day and night, every single day, with people inside from the FSA or from the people who are fighting the regime.
FSA, the Free Syrian Army.
The Free Syrian Army. And now it is a revolution, not just military rebels, or no, it's a complete revolution. Syria or the Syrian people, they need so many things, including weapons, including humanitarian aids, including international intervention. This will continue for sure. Let me just explain one thing, why the regime escalated the killing since like a week or 10 days ago. This is something I know for sure, that the killing from the very beginning was, I called it under control killing, means between 25 to 50 people every day would be killed. That was determined issue, not randomly happened. Now, the regime knows for well, and I believe that the Russian government is giving him this indication, even with the visit of Lavrov recently, yesterday, that they will tell him, we cannot cover you for
forever.
Forever. No, we cannot.
So it's a race against time. You were saying
exactly.
you were making that
it's a
point.
race against time.
Vincent Floriani, is it a good idea to give weapons to the Free Syrian Army?
This is not what we are doing. This is not what we are concentrating on. I mean, I agree with General Hashem that the situation is terrible, and yes, maybe the casualties, unfortunately, is much higher than what we have, than the figure we have. What we are doing is we are working in different ways. There is this idea of a group of friends of the Syrian people. There are a new set of sanctions that the European Union is probably going to take in the coming days. There is the support to the Arab League. This is what we can achieve also maybe in the UN General Assembly or in Geneva in the Council, Human Rights Council.
The White House has just announced that it's going to hold a Friends of Syria meeting in the near future. There's been several. There's the Syrian National Council. There's a fragmented opposition for the time being. We heard earlier this week the UK Foreign Secretary acknowledge as much in the House of Commons. At this point, who do you deal with? It seems kind of complicated.
Well, we meet all the opposition groups, the opposition people who are willing to move towards democratic Syria and inclusive. We are meeting in particular the Syrian National Council and encouraging them to be more representative, more inclusive, but we are meeting them a lot. Yesterday, the French Foreign Minister met with Bourlan Khalioum, the head of the Syrian National Council. So this is what we are doing.
Let me ask you on this, Marina Ottaway, is it a good idea to arm the insurgents, and who is the right person to speak to within the opposition?
Well, I think that arming of the insurgents only makes sense in the context of a clear plan. For example, if there is enough unity within the Syrian opposition, which remains to be seen at this point, and if there is indication that the Free Syrian Army is in a position, for example, to provide security in this protected area we have been discussing, then it might make sense, in fact, to provide weapons to the Free Syrian Army working in collaboration with the civilian opposition to try and implement this safe haven. I think we are still very far from that situation existing. So I would be against just providing arms to these groups and that. The providing of weapons must be in the context of a clear plan of what is the purpose of this providing arms.
And among the scenarios, Marina Ottaway, I just want to pick up on this point. Among the scenarios for intervention, the UK newspaper The Guardian reports this Wednesday that in Washington, the National Security Council is said to be preparing a presidential finding, an executive order authorizing covert action as a policy option, but it is not clear whether the White House would take the risky step of signing it. Effectively, is the United States seriously contemplating sending special forces into Syria?
I don't have any specific information. Keep in mind that authorizing the deployment of special forces does not mean that the decision to deploy them has been taken. It may be more a question of saying we are, if the circumstances warranted, then we are in a position to intervene. I don't know of any decision that has been taken, of any clear plan that exists so far to deploy special forces.
Bahadir Kaliagassi, if you recall the day that the French announced that they had begun the bombing in Libya, the Turks weren't even invited to that meeting in Paris. This time around, it's looking as though Turkey is working towards hosting a big conference in Istanbul. What are the lessons learned from the Libya experience?
Well, first of all, of course, the Syrian opposition is mainly based now in Turkey, Free Syrian Army and its leaders. Well, Turkey has this border, and Turkey has had very intensive and increasingly intensive economic relations with Syria until last year. In the last 10 years, our tourism potential, our trade potential, they were 5 times increased. So Turkey was a country and is still a country which is maybe the most involved in the future of Syria. Therefore, of course, it's different than Libya. The Libyan case has its own particularities, but concerning Syria, if there is a military intervention, where will be the departure of any missions? Let's say NATO bases and US bases in Incirlik, in South Turkey, maybe. But from Israel, no way. From Iraq, from Lebanon, from Jordan, well, they have quite volatile ethnic mixes in relation also with Syrians' own domestic problems. So Turkey is very much concerned if there is any military intervention by a certain international coalition. But that will be very risky also for Turkey. So now Turkey is more than proactive for the sake of Syria, but for also to really re-establish a trend for democracy in the Middle East. It concerns not only Syria, it also concerns Lebanon, it concerns Iraq. So it's a broader game that is being played now.
And much broader.
The most important of all, it's a clear international political will. If it doesn't happen with the United Nations, outside the framework of the UN, but we first need to give the signal to the Syria that whatever the implementation problems may be for, say, safe haven or something else, the will is there and it will just get stronger and stronger. That is the first thing to do.
All right. Vincent Florani, before we go, the viewers on Facebook, very divided over this. Some saying, got to go in and intervene. This is a crisis. We have to intervene now. And then others saying it smacks of imperialism on Twitter. One comment, that's what they did in Libya. Great. Another Arab country's down in flames. It's tricky.
It's very tricky. That's why, we want to avoid a civil war in Syria. We're concentrating now, as I said, on a political transition. We have the Arab League leading the way. We are supporting the Arab League. It's why we try to achieve in New York last Saturday, but it was vetoed. But we still want to try to give a chance to a political transition.
Vincent Florani, I want to thank you. I also want to thank General Akil Hashem for being with us. And from Brussels, Bahadir Kaliagassi, and from Washington, Marina Ottaway. We also want to thank you for being with us here for the France 24 debate. The reminder, a programming note, on Thursday, you'll be able to see France 24's reporters, our exclusive look with the Free Syrian Army. Stay with us. Coming up next, it's time for Business, and that's hosted by William Edwards.
Changing lifestyles, eating patterns and population growth have all contributed to a massive rise in rubbish, so much so that French household waste has doubled in the last 40 years. From Japan to Mexico or here in France, we're taking a look at some of the most exceptional responses to managing waste.
Don't miss Environment, Saturday 11:40 a.m. Paris time on France 24.
France 24 on your iPad. Keep up to date on international news in real time, whether you're at home or on the move. France 24's worldwide coverage now on your iPad. Reports from the field, debates, interviews, accessible anywhere, anytime, and it's all free. France 24 on the iPad. The news, wherever and whenever you want it. He made his dream come true, getting the world to dance. DJ, producer, master of remix, Bob Sinclair is igniting dance floors once again with his latest album. A special edition of The Culture Show with the most sought-after French DJ on earth. Monday, 5:10 p.m. Paris time on France 24.